All right.
Hey everyone, thank you for being here today. Welcome to our presentation on Green New Year's. My name is Laura Coates and I'm an AmeriCorps member serving with Conservation Nebraska's Common Ground program. Conservation Nebraska's mission is to protect our state's natural legacy by educating the public, supporting communities, and increasing civic engagement, which we accomplish through locally led education efforts and community engagement projects to address local conservation concerns. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, I have a few housekeeping rules to go over. For the people joining online, your cameras are off and you will be muted throughout the presentation. Please type any questions you have in the chat or the Q&A section, and we will have a brief time at the end to get those answered for you. For everyone in person, there's a QR code on the screen for the survey here. Yep, for both in-person and online attendees, we will have a very brief survey following the presentation that shouldn't take longer than 1 to 2 minutes to complete. The survey helps support programming like this one, so we appreciate you taking the time to fill this out. Tonight's speaker for No More Empty Pots is Sid Kelly. Sid Kelly is a mom and grandma of 16, a partner and a pet lover who enjoys sauntering, reading, canning and preserving foods, and cooking and baking. She's also a retired teacher of children ages 0 to 18 and adults in both formal and informal settings. She is committed to raising awareness around conservation issues like climate change and empowering folks to do what they can within their own circles to lessen the impact of humans living on Earth. Please join me in welcoming Sid Kelly.
Hello. Okay. Good morning. I'm Sid and I'm from No Empty Pots, and I'm a new employee of No More Empty Pots.
Really?
I was doing some research.
Sid,
for-
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Can you, I think something is glitching because it's showing this. It's showing just slideshow.
Oh,
Yes.
show webinar. Sorry, guys, hold on.
And then share. Yeah, you might need to share that one.
All right. Okay, let's go full screen. Resume. Try that and see if that helps. That didn't help. It says my screen sharing is paused. Oh, there's a little. Okay. So how do we unpause? Resume, please.
Yeah, that's what I would think it would.
But it won't do anything.
You hit this,
Mm-hmm.
will it let you?
Well, it did that. So
Mm.
let's try that there. And then we got this.
Maybe try to.
There we go. Okay, so now we'll go into slideshow. Oh my goodness.
There's it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much.
They didn't hire me by text. I tell you that. So anyway, I've lived a lot of places around this country. New Mexico, Arizona, South Dakota, Minnesota, Missouri, Texas, and California. But I started out here and came back here. I am an enthusiastic learner. Tell me you're gonna let me get into a class for free, I'm there. I don't care what it is. And good morning, Dex. This is my boss. And so I was telling you, I was doing some research for another thing and came across, I needed to research No More Empty Pots. And I was in their website and I was like, oh, that's me. Oh, and then I saw that they had a job opening for an educator and I said, I'm in. And Dex said, you're in. So that's just been going on since the end of October. I'm very happy to be here and I'm so glad you guys braved the cold to actually come out here. And we already talked about my interests, that 15+1 grandchildren, there's a bun in the oven, due the end of March. So I like to be active in the community and all that other stuff. Anybody else a saunterer? I go out to Chalco Hills and I see all those people around the lake. Here's me and Will and the dogs going, ooh, oh, look at that butterfly. It's hugging trees and stuff. Anyway, that's what I do. Here's a,
Ooh. It's very sensitive.
I guess. No. An overview
go.
of
There you go.
No More Empty Pots. Started in 2010. A few people concerned about things in North Omaha and beyond around food insecurity. Came up with the idea for No More Empty Pots. And then they started programming with the Community Market Basket, which is a food service. Let's see, in 2014, we went into Florence and took over some 100-year-old buildings, bought those, and did some renovations. 2015 began the No More Empty Cups coffee shop. Over there, has anybody seen Potts's Food Hub, North 30th, just a block north of State Street? So there's a Cups Cafe there. It's delightful. So if you ever want to stop in, we have a lot of stuff going on in that building. We have a kids kitchen, which has 6 cook stations, as well as lots of space to sit down and enjoy whatever you just did. And they're a little bit lower than standard, so kids are more easily brought into the lesson. And so the Food Hub, we broke ground on that. The one we're in now. And then in 2017, there's a shared use kitchen in the basement of the hub, where there's a few kitchens where entrepreneurs like people with food trucks or people making products that they then put into stores can rent those spaces. They've got dedicated storage, so they don't have to haul their stuff in and out every time, and it's clean and beautiful. And if you were trying to do this at home, you'd be cramped and crazy. So it's very nice to have that in the community. And then the upper levels of the Food Hub, including the Cups Cafe, the Kids Kitchen, the Business Incubator, and there's our rooftop garden. It's beautiful. And then 2019, the Food Hub was completed and they served over 400 youth in June and July. So that's pretty big numbers for a brand new facility, I think. And then 2020, community need to be more about food insecurity. Community harvest and feeding our neighbors programs have served over 10,000 individuals. So No More Empty Pots is a solid community partner around food and food insecurity. This is just a little overview of this past year, which we can't see because I don't know why this thing's up here. But but it'll just block slides no matter where I put it. But anyway, 2023 milestones. Served over 4,600 individuals in 40 zip codes, over 2,400 hours of educational programming. That's what I do in the afternoons. I go to afternoon school programs. Over 38,500 pounds of local food from small growers to big growers in the area. 165 volunteers, new building in North Omaha, and a president and CEO appointment was announced when our founding CEO retired. Talia, oh, I'm gonna blank on her name. Isn't that terrible? Huh? Talia McDuff? McGill. See how I am? You can tell I'm new. Anyway, she's an incredible person. Just the aura that emanates from her. She's so very positive and really a hard driver of herself. Let's go. Okay. Why are we not advancing? Okay.
I think you might have, well,
Yeah, oh,
there you go.
there we go. Okay.
Yep.
So what we came to talk about today is food waste. That's what I came to talk about. Food waste. So there's some statistics about that. Before the pandemic, about 35 million people in this country were food insecure. That number rose to about 47, almost 47.5 million in 2023. That's a big chunk of our neighbors across this country. Americans discard more food than any other country, nearly 40 million tons, or 30 to 40% of the entire US food supply. We'll talk about why that is, the reasons that it is discarded. Globally, we waste about 1.4 billion tons of food every year. And more than 80% of Americans discard perfectly good food because they misunderstand the labels. And I typed this out today, looked it up, all the food package expiration dates defined. So I'll have this for you. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time talking about it now, but I have this for you. It's what sell by date means, best if used by, you know, all that kind of stuff, used by, expiration, quality assurance date. So we have that, including, there's well, it's a link, but you can't quite link it from the paper, but there's a website, about food expiration dates, if you want to get more information, more in-depth information than that. So what I want to do today is give you some ideas for reducing food waste at home. I know you guys are just like me, and you open that produce drawer, and down in the bottom, it's kind of starting to puddle because it's been sitting there too long, whatever it is. I have the worst time with peppers. But so we're going to talk about things that will help you to move on. I made up the 5 P's of home kitchen management. Number 1 is peruse. 2 is plan, then you're going to purchase, then you're going to prepare, and then you're going to put up. Okay? The 5 P's of home kitchen management. We'll start with the number 1, peruse. Before you go grocery shopping, we all have that in the back of our heads. I've got to get groceries sometime in the next 2 days. Before you get to that point, take inventory of what you've got. That's my full messy fridge. Open up that produce drawer, see what's in there that needs to be used now. Leftovers, pull them all out. Take inventory, and then use up all the aging foods. This is my fun thing. We're going to play Chopped at home. Anybody watch Chopped? It's a Food Network program where chefs are competing and they have a basket of ingredients. They don't know what's in there until time, and they're under time constraints, and they got to use the ingredients in the basket, even if they're really weird and they never heard of them before, to make an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert, 3 different baskets through the competition. So we're going to do that today. We're going to practice playing Chopped at home. Did y'all get a pen? Yes, good. All right. Let's play Chopped at home. Before I pass these out, I'll give you an example of what I'm looking for. So here's my playing card. Oh, in my fridge, I have to use up a half a pound of pork roast, a rutabaga, some 3 potatoes, 2 stalks of celery, and an orange. What am I going to do with that to make a meal? Okay, so I decided, and y'all can work together on this because I have 6 sets of these that you can work from. But I think that I will cook up the rutabaga and potatoes on the stove and mash them together. And while I'm cooking them up, maybe I'll just throw those 2 stalks of celery in there for extra flavor, right? I'm just boiling this up in water. And rutabaga, by the way, takes forever to get soft. So cook them for about half an hour before you add the potatoes. And then orange, gosh, you know what? I might just use a little orange zest and put it in that mash. And maybe drizzle the juice over the pork roast while I'm heating it up. I'm gonna slice it and serve it with that mash. So anyway, that's what you guys are gonna do. You're gonna get a list of ingredients. You're gonna put your little heads together and decide what you're gonna make for dinner, okay? Because we gotta use this step up so we don't lose it.
I'm gonna put that one in the chat so that people online can do it too.
Do what?
I'm gonna type that out and put it in the chat so that people online can do it too.
Oh, okay.
I got one. I
Oh,
took a
good.
picture of it. Yep.
Okay, good. All right, so. You 3 want to work together? Sure. Go. And how about you 3? There you go. Not yet. I'll get you guys over here. And you guys want to play? All right, you guys can have this one. Oh, I showed you the ingredients. I was going to do that. Okay. Oh, Dex. Okay, I'm gonna steal you for Dex. Okay.
Zero.
All right. On your mark, get set, flip it, you got 10 minutes. I will make it 7. Okay, next slide is plan. Let's be realistic. How many home cooked meals are you really gonna cook this week? I always say 4, and then I end up doing 3, and then I've got all those ingredients. So, soccer practice, a meeting after work, and keep those in your head. If you can come ahead for that evening, fine, but you're not gonna come home from that and cook a meal. We just don't do it. It's too tiring. Then plan your menu based on how many meals you're gonna cook, and check your pantry, check your fresh, frozen, whole prepared foods to see what can go in your menu, and make your shopping list and stick to it. That's the hardest part of a shopping list, sticking to it. So those are pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I don't think we need any more explanation for this, do we? This is stuff we do all the time, or mean to. Okay, purchasing. Don't go to the store on an empty stomach. You'll come home with half a carload of candy and bread. Choose your stores. I check ads. I always check ads before I go grocery shopping. And I start at Aldi with my whole list, and whatever's left on my list after I leave Aldi, I go to someone else, some other store that had the good prices this week. And take your list and stick to it. Yes, I said it twice. Stick to your list. You will save money and waste, right? Okay. Prepare foods and store properly. Fresh produce and meat. Of course, fresh produce. You can look up online and see all kinds of tips for prolonging the life of your produce, like putting foil over the end of the bunch of bananas, keeps them from ripening too fast. Wet paper towel around the base of your broccoli keeps that fresh longer. There's all kinds of stuff. I've been seeing stuff about putting berries in glass jars to store them in your refrigerator for twice as long as they would keep. So there's all kinds of stuff. You can look that up online. Meat, if you're not going to use it in the next 2 to 3 days, put it in the freezer. And pantry items, rotate, bring up the older stuff, put the new stuff behind it so that you're getting the freshest food you can. And get the most from foods. And what I mean by this, this photo is my freezer. This whole shelf is stocked, well, except for those 3 things. That's some rice, that Mexican rice I made. Anyway, but all this is stock. I made splurged for Christmas and had a duck, but I made stock from a carcass. Chicken stock, beef stock, shrimp stock. I just saved the shells. What else? Chicken, veggie stock, beef stock, pork stock, all kinds of stock. I almost never make rice with water anymore. I go straight for a stock. It just increases the flavor and nutrition of your rice. Okay, and for soup, it's one of the easiest things to do. I don't know what to do with this food. I'm going to put it in a soup. So you've got stuff there ready to go. I do try to also, on the weekends, when I make a big meal, I make it double. And good morning.
Good morning.
I make it double. How are you? Good. I make it double and put aside half for another meal. And on that night when I thought I was gonna cook, but I'm not really, pull that out of the freezer and cook it up. I think up here is some pot roast. So yeah, utilize your freezer. I think this next slide, yes. I'm just showing this already. Well, that was the last thing anyway. This I keep in my freezer in the kitchen. Ziploc freezer bags. This one just says for stock. And I've got all kinds of vegetable scraps, not all kinds, but onion, carrot, celery, orange, because man, a little bit of citrus in your stock, especially chicken stock and vegetable stock, really perks it up. And then over here, every time I have shrimp and I peel the shells, I put them in the bag, and when my bag is full, I make shrimp stock. Yeah, so that's what we were doing there. Make sure I'm done here. Yeah, get the most from your foods. You know, I know when I'm done making stock, I still have all that waste, right? But composting is another thing we're not going to get into today, but I do have an idea for you. It was Compost Club, Google Compost Club Omaha. They actually have sites that you can drop off your compost. If you don't have space at home to have a compost heap, I actually bought one of those machines that's supposed to compost in your kitchen. Maybe there are better ones out there, but I'm not sold yet. It was not a good one. But anyway, you can minimize your scraps and use it to the very end. Chicken carcasses, any kind of bones, save those up in the freezer for making stock, you know? And then canning, some fruits and preserves and even meat. I've got some meat. Canning is kind of a new thing for me, and I'm totally into it. You know how you get onto something new and you just dive in. That's where I'm at right now. And I'll be telling you a little more about that coming up too, when we talk about what's going on at POTS coming up. So put up and preserve, you know, you get carried away and you buy 2 pounds of strawberries and you know you're not going to eat them all before they go bad. You could cook them up and make a preserve. You don't even have to can it. Actually, you just keep it in your fridge if it's a small amount, you know. So catch it before it goes bad. That's our last slide. So what is this says down here about, oh yes, freezing, canning, oh, labeling. Label. Every one of these has the date and the product on the top. Even in my freezer, everything is labeled. I didn't get struck down and my nose didn't grow. Everything's supposed to be labeled. I do my best. Okay. All right. And then, oops. There we go. Upcoming classes at POTS. February is going to be a great month. 3 big things going on. There'll be a Black History cooking class. It's a sharing of Black recipes, food traditions, on February 8th over at the Hub. There's a Valentine's Day event that's going to be a very nice dinner. And then there's virtual harvest of the month where you can online see what to do with a food that is usually ready to harvest in that month. We do that every month. Okay, and under construction, food preservation classes beginning with water bath canning, starting late spring. That's what I'm working on to do that. And what I'm hoping is that we'll be able to do it sort of like this monthly with whatever produce is readily available that month. Okay, so you can learn how to can and start saving some of your excess foods or take advantage of the sales. You know, I often see foods on sale and I think, ooh, I'd like to get a bunch of that, but then you really do have to commit to preserving it in one way or another, freezing or canning or something, drying. Yeah. So did I do it? Oh, I didn't do it very well, did I? Okay. I was looking at the time. So I got one more slide. If it'll move, there we go. I will take your questions and I will also make sure that you have some other information from POTS. Do you have questions about?
Okay. All right, and then you ready? Good, awesome, great. Hello, everybody. Welcome back for our second presentation today for our Green New Year's resolution. My name is Morgan. I am an AmeriCorps member serving with Conservation Nebraska's Common Ground program. Our mission is to protect our state's natural legacy by educating the public, supporting communities, increasing civic engagement, which we accomplish through locally led education efforts and community engagement projects to address local conservation concerns. Just a refresher, your camera, microphones, and your screens, I'm so sorry, are paused. If you do have questions during our presentation, please put those in the chat and we can get to those at the end. And I will hand it over to Dr. Shannon Bartelt-Hunt and we will go ahead and get started. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks so much for being here today. I'm happy to talk to you this afternoon about water quality. I'm just going to pull up my slides, just one second.
You should have ability to share, let me know if you don't.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. So hopefully now everyone is seeing my screen. Great, so today we're going to talk a little bit about clean water. And so again, thanks for joining today. I'm a professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. My research focuses on water quality, and I have about 20 years of experience in water-related research and topics. So we're going to talk a bit about water quality today, but if you have other questions about water or water quality that I don't cover, just feel free to answer those. We'll have plenty of time for questions after the presentation. So I thought I'd start with some fun facts about water. First, with our water, we think about it being a renewable resource, and it is, but really there's the same amount of water on Earth now as there was when the Earth was formed. So we don't really have new water. It just changes its location and maybe what phase it's in. About 75% of our brains are water. About 50% of trees are water. I thought these were interesting. It takes 100,000 gallons of water to make a car. If we take a 5-minute shower, which who can just take a shower in 5 minutes? I'm usually like losing track of how long I'm in there. That's 25 to 50 gallons of water. And a cow has to drink about 4 gallons of water to make a gallon of milk. So just thinking about all the ways that we use water and how much water is kind of embedded in everything that we use, food, supplies, vehicles, everything that we do every day. So where's our water? I love this updated water cycle, which you may remember seeing a version of this in elementary school or middle school. But our water is in a lot of different places. Quite a bit of it is buried deep underground or in oceans. But of course we have surface water, rivers and lakes. We have snow or, snowpack and glacial ice. And then we have water in the soil as soil moisture. And then sometimes that water, of course, falls back to earth as precipitation. But what I really like about this updated water cycle is it also shows how humans use water. So it's not just all natural processes. We use water for agriculture. We use it for industrial uses. We use it in our cities. And so I think it's really nice to show that humans have a really big impact on our water cycle. So how much of our water is fresh water? And that's the water that we can actually use for everything that we need for both, human activities as well as most of the other organisms on Earth that can't live in seawater. And so it's a very, very small amount. So this is just kind of 2 representations of that. If you look at the picture of the Earth, that second blue ball is all of the water that's on Earth. And the little tiny dot there is how much of that water is then fresh water. So very small fraction, also represented in those cubes. There's about, 97.5% of our water in oceans. Only 2.5% is fresh water. Most of that fresh water is frozen in ice caps and polar ice. Most of the rest of the water, the next cube down, is very deep underground, so we can't really extract it. So about 1% of the Earth's water is actually available for us to use. What do we use our water for? This is just a graphic that shows that we use it for a combination of agricultural production, industrial uses of water like that car manufacturing, and then municipal use, which just represents all of the water that we use in our households in a daily basis, and just showing across the different continents how that can change. You can see for us in North America, we're using kind of equal amounts for about 40% for agriculture, about another 45% for industrial use, and just a little over 10% for municipal use. So when we talk about water quality, definitely the activities that we take can change and impact our water quality, but a lot of it has to do with industrial and agricultural uses of water. So I guess first question is, which water source is healthier for you and better for the environment? Here we have Fiji water, Aquafina, or a glass of tap water. I put the Fiji water there, not necessarily to pick a particular brand, but because it specifically mentions that it's artesian water. I think this is one of those interesting facts about bottled water, that artesian just refers to a particular type of well where the water is under pressure and actually can come to the earth's surface without additional pumping. So I think we think of that word as being like fresh or pure or clean water, but it really just has to do with the hydraulics of how water can get to the earth's surface. So artesian water, bottled water, tap water. If you have answered, hopefully you've answered that tap water is definitely a very important and good and healthy water source. Some facts about bottled water. Bottled water is much more expensive than tap water. Tap water is tested very regularly by the EPA for a lot of different types of contaminants. Bottled water doesn't get tested at the same frequency, and it's also regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, not the EPA. Bottled water could just be sourced from public tap water systems. So it's not necessarily that you're getting a different type of water. It might have possibly have some extra filtration, but it could just be from a public tap water system. And then one of the big issues with bottled water is over 90% of plastic bottles are not recycled. There's a whole kind of segue on plastics that we could get into related to water. But really, that's one of the biggest issues as well with bottled waters, and you're just contributing a lot to waste issues and waste concerns. So there's lots of different contaminants that can be in our water. So this is showing it coming from a bottled water, but really thinking just more about natural waters. Many of these things are removed in tap water, and if a bottled water is coming from a tap water system, then they're going to be removed in bottled water as well. But things that we're concerned about, bacterial contaminants, chemical contaminants, metals, anions, things that we may, PFAS, just things that you may have heard about in the news. And of course, we're concerned about all of these contaminants being present in our water because there can be health effects if we drink water that have these contaminants present. So one of the contaminants that we are most concerned about in Nebraska is nitrate. So nitrate is a very common water contaminant in Nebraska. Kind of looking back in history, why do we have imbalance of nitrate? It really came about in the early part of the 1900s when scientists developed this process that allowed them to produce ammonia from atmospheric nitrogen. So what we've done, and why nitrate is such a problem in our water, is that we have kind of changed that global balance of nitrogen, pulling it from the atmosphere and putting it onto the Earth's surface. We needed to do this for agricultural production. But so this allows us to grow, crops at the intensity that we are able to in Nebraska. But it also changed that balance of nitrogen. So it just increased how much nitrogen we have on land and in water. So we apply nitrogen as ammonia to crops, but also to yards. We use nitrogen in our households as well, all across the state. These are converted to nitrate by bacteria. If you're really interested in the chemistry, there's a couple of chemical reactions over there where ammonia in step 1 is converted to nitrite, NO2, by a type of bacteria. And then a different group of bacteria actually converts that nitrite to nitrate. And that excess nitrate then can wash off of soil and be present in our water. And how does nitrate get into water? It can enter water from lots of different sources, from industrial sources, from public wastewater treatment systems, from runoff, both from agricultural lands, but urban runoff. We can release nitrate in vehicle combustion. So there's just lots of different ways that nitrate can get into our water supply. Health impacts of nitrate. Typically, we think about the health impacts, and what the EPA has set the drinking water standards for is methaglobinemia, which is blue baby syndrome. And to avoid that, they have set a limit of 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate in our water. But there's been quite a few studies linking nitrate to other potential health impacts. And sometimes those impacts could be realized at lower levels of nitrate. So things like gastrointestinal tract cancers, pancreatic tumors, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Alzheimer's, thyroid function alterations. All of these things have been linked with exposure to nitrate. Showing the state of Nebraska, you can see then in wells, this is a map of the state divided up by natural resource districts across the state. And you can see those levels of nitrate that are measured in wells across the state. Those concentrations, any of the yellow, but definitely the orange and red dots would exceed the drinking water standard. So those would be samples or wells where if you were drinking water from those wells, the nitrate would be above what the EPA recommends as safe. But even some of those green dots, some of those effects could be realized at lower concentrations. Some studies show that there could be concerns with nitrate for certain populations, even as low as 2 milligrams per liter. So really, maybe even some of those green wells could be of concern, depending on whether you're concerned about elderly people, people who are immune compromised, or children. So one of the main things I just want to talk about is most of the time when we talk about these water contaminants, we talk about concentrations, milligrams per liter, part per million, part per billion. So how much is that really? Can you see water contamination? And I think that's one of the points that I want to make is that sometimes we think, well, if a water is contaminated, it's going to look contaminated, smell bad, taste bad. And that is not necessarily the case. So I'm going to kind of do a little thought exercise here with these pictures. So take this cup, fill it with food coloring, which is 1 part dye to 10 parts water. So that cup on the left is pure food coloring. And then I can dilute that by taking a milliliter of that food coloring, put it into the second cup, and then add 9 more milliliters of water, just clean water that doesn't have that food coloring in it. And so each cup has the same amount of liquid in it. 1 cup just has taken 1 milliliter of the food coloring, added it to 9 milliliters of water. And if I keep repeating that, taking 1 milliliter of water from the previous cup and keep diluting it out with fresh water, I'm going to end up with something that looks like this if I do that over a series of 12 different cups. And so you can see that the food color gets sequentially lighter by about cup 5 or 6. You don't really see it anymore. And the subsequent cups basically just look like a cup of clean water. And so I promise this is the only math that'll be in this presentation. But if you think about what the concentrations are, starting with the first cup that was pure food coloring, 1 part dye to 10 parts water, and then we diluted that 10 times and 10 times and 10 times. So that's what continues. If you get to cup 6, that's what we would call a part per million, or a milligram per liter. And if you get to cup 9, that's what we would call a part per billion. So when we think about, or you see these contaminant limits that are set by EPA, they're often set with these concentrations of part per million or part per billion. That's actually what the level of contaminant, that if you kind of want to think about how you might visualize it. So when did the solution first appear colorless? Probably about cup 5. So that's here just before a part per million. That'd be a part per 100,000. And so then, is the food coloring still present in these cups, all of these cups? Of course, the answer is yes, right? It all started from that first initial cup. So even in cup 12, you're still going to have some contaminant present in that cup, even if you can't see it. And I think if you took that cup and drank it, you would not think there was any food coloring at all in that cup. And so, how this relates back to water quality is to protect human health. The EPA sets these maximum levels for contaminants in drinking water. They're called MCL, maximum contaminant level, or maximum contaminant limit. And chemicals that are more toxic have a lower allowable concentration. And that obviously makes sense. You can only have a smaller amount of something that has greater toxicity. So the lower the limits are for a particular chemical, the more toxic that chemical may be to us as humans. So here are some common contaminants that we might, and their EPA drinking water limits. So arsenic has a maximum contaminant level of 0.01 milligrams per liter, or 1 in 100,000. Nitrate, which we talked about, has a drinking water level of 10 parts per million, or 10 in a million. Atrazine, which is an herbicide, has a concentration of 3 parts per billion, or 3 in 1 billion. And PFAS, which stands for poly and perfluorinated compounds, or sorry, poly or perfluorinated alkyl substances, has a new drinking water standard of 4 parts per trillion. So 4 over a trillion. And so where do those things land in this? So arsenic, 1 in 10,000. We said the first cup was 1 in 10, 100, 10,000. So that would be, or sorry, 1,000, 10,000. So that would be about cup 4. Would be the level of arsenic that is allowable to consume. Nitrate is 10 parts per million. So that's going to be halfway, not halfway, but about between cup 5 and cup 6, right? Because cup 6 is a part per billion. So this is a little bit higher amount than that. Atrazine at 3 parts per billion is going to be between cups 8 and 9. And then PFAS at 4 parts per trillion would actually be, I think here, between cups 11 and cups 12. So definitely by the time you get to PFAS, you would not sense any of that material being present in that water sample. So my point here is that water can still contain contaminants, even if you can't smell, see, or taste them. Some of these contaminants can still cause health issues at that level. What is great about our municipal water systems is that these contaminants are regulated, so they are tested and measured and can't be present in our municipal water supply. But if you have using a private well or not on a municipal water system, it is really important to do regular water testing so that you can make sure that your water supply doesn't contain any of these contaminants. And so with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Can you guys, so with the blue baby syndrome, with, obviously here in Omaha and like bigger cities, our
Mhm.
water's controlled and there's, I don't want to say parameters we have to follow, but with people who don't have those private wells, and for whatever reason that they choose not to? I mean, is it more of an issue in those like outreach communities, or, I mean, do you see it here in town?
Yeah,
still?
so the,
Or any of those side of it, not
Yeah.
just Blue Baby, but.
right, yeah, so in the city or in really any municipality that's doing water quality testing, that water will have nitrate below 10 milligrams per liter because that's the drinking water standard. Private wells, don't have a testing requirement and it's just up to the individual homeowner. So if it's definitely recommended that people test their water for nitrate, but also for bacteria and other contaminants at least once a year. But practically that there's no requirement to do it. So it doesn't always happen. It can be confusing and expensive, to kind of know how to do that. So yes, that's where there's more potential risk for some of these health issues because people could be drinking water, with excess nitrate or excess other contaminants and not even really be aware of it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
is there ever a general reason as to why people are hesitant to not test? You know,
Yeah, I think
outside of maybe
that,
not-
yeah, I think generally it kind of relates to, there's not necessarily knowing what to test for, how frequently to test. It can just be confusing, like how to collect the water samples, where to send them. So I think that's the main reason, just life probably. But it is definitely a good idea, to just do that water testing once a year. And many people do have home treatment systems, but not everyone, right? So, and you may not have it on every faucet in your home either. So, I mean, it could be maybe you have the home system, home treatment on like your kitchen faucet, but maybe you're still showering or brushing your teeth, with water from another faucet that doesn't have it. So you could still have exposure.
When you have those RO systems, is that meant to cover every faucet done in your home?
It just
or-
depends on where they're installed. Sometimes they're like on your main faucet. Sometimes it could be a full home system. And those will be very effective at removing water contaminants. But then there's just, maintenance, of course, like associated with that as well. Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um,
It's naturally occurring. So the question was about arsenic, and that's naturally occurring. So it can just be in soil. And since a lot of times we drink groundwater, things that are present in soil can leach into the water. And then again, if it's a public water system, those are all monitored and removed. But if you're just in a part, of the state that has elevated arsenic, it's more likely that arsenic could be in your water. Mm-hmm.
Being done to like address the contamination.
Yeah, so question was kind of like what's being done to address water contamination. I think it varies based on the type of contaminant. So with nitrate, there's a lot being done with agricultural producers to, educate people about not applying excess nutrients and excess nitrate. Definitely there's a cost to that. So most producers don't want to apply excess because it's money, to buy those chemicals. Um, Other things like PFAS, which are newly regulated in drinking water. It's again probably more about there's not a lot. There's now a regulation for drinking water, but and some of the manufacturers are trying to look for alternative chemicals, but they're not necessarily, phased out. And then of course, some of the chemicals that they're developing as alternatives, people are finding are actually more toxic than the original. So that's more it can come from industrial processes, but it can also just come from our use of, things that have PFAS in them, nonstick coatings on, pans, clothing. There's, just a lot of things that have been coated in PFAS. And it's just kind of right. So they're called forever chemicals because they don't necessarily break down. And that's because they have these carbon fluorine. There are these chains of carbon chains that have fluorines on them, and that's just really difficult to degrade. So that backbone just doesn't really break down once it's in the environment. And so that's going to be a very long-term issue because there's not really any regulation on whether they can't be, you know what I mean? People can still manufacture with them. So I think people are starting to look for alternative products. And so there's interest for consumers, right? People don't want to have that, but they're going to be around for a very long time. Yeah. Plus all of it that's already been produced.
Yeah.
So people are now trying to look on ways to actually, and you can destroy those compounds, but it takes like a thermal destruction process. So a huge amount of energy. So if we think about like, okay, if we want to get rid of these in our waste, we're probably having to do some kind of incineration, which is not how we handle our waste. And yeah, so it's just this very, it's going to be around for a while.
In terms of waste, so I mean, you know, you could have a filter system at
Mhm.
home and do tap water.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people just, for some reason, go towards bottled water.
Mhm.
It's like a more appealing.
Yeah, and I think that's
selection.
one of the biggest things that, trying to educate people that really, if you're getting your water from a municipal, a fountain or faucet, it is tested and treated. There definitely can be localized issues, right? If people have like lead pipes or, lead service lines, that can be an issue. But the water that's leaving, the plant has all of this treatment to remove all of those things. Bottled water oftentimes is tap water, maybe with just some additional filtration, like a carbon filter, like what you might get if you were using a fridge filter or like a Brita filter or something like that, just on a more of an industrial scale. So it's not necessarily a cleaner or more pure water supply. And then you're introducing all of the plastic waste issues. So yeah, and I will say like, yeah, but I think in general, people are starting to get much better. So many people now like carry a water bottle with them or, carry like water bottles, right? And I think that to the extent that people can, obviously, I grab a bottle of water from time to time, right? Like you just convenience or you just don't have a chance to, um, grab your refillable water bottle, but I think people sometimes are concerned about the quality of tap water, when in reality, it is honestly like a very safe thing to drink. And it can cost you way, 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 way less. So cost savings and then also less harmful for the environment just with the plastic that's getting produced.
I always think it's a misconception.
Mm-hmm,
Like,
definitely.
My children
Right.
want to drink water out of the sink and I'm like.
Right. And sometimes, right, just a taste thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I will admit myself, like I prefer really cold, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, water comes out of my fridge filter, you know what I mean? Like that's the water I prefer. I don't always just go to the sink and fill up my cup, but that's still tap water, so still okay. But some people might just like that Brita filter in their fridge filled up from the tap, versus versus grabbing a bottle of water.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I don't have anything else. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
So.
Cool. Well, yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate it. And thanks to those of you that stuck around for the second presentation and happy to answer any questions. And I think the presentation will get posted, right? And
Yeah,
people can always follow up with questions. Great.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, thanks again. For
Yeah,
presenting.
thank you. No problem.